John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the NFL for FanRag Sports NFL, and, of course, the Eagles for us at 97.3 ESPN.com. We got a lot going on again, John. The NFL news continues, and some big news surrounding running backs today. Really, Adrian Peterson, not much of a surprise. Don't know if Jamal Charles is a big surprise, but Jamal Charles released today. Peterson's option declined. We're going to have two very intriguing running backs hit the free agent market next week.
Yeah, two big names. I don't know how intriguing they are. I know people see those names and they get very, very excited. And the first thing you want to talk about is, are the Eagles interested? Certainly not with Adrian Peterson, perhaps because of Doug Peterson's history, maybe Jamal Charles a better fit. But with his injury history and where the Eagles are, in the fact that they want to go to more of a youth movement, it's very unlikely that they would be interested in either player. But, hey, when you have the resume that those guys have, it's going to create some interest. And we knew it was coming with Adrian Peterson. We talked about it on this show for weeks. But once you see Kansas City signing Eric Berry, making him the highest paid safety. They signed an offensive lineman to $8 million a year. Then you kind of knew they're up against it from a salary cap standpoint, so it made a lot of sense that they moved on from Jamal Charles. And his injury history, it's very long. It's very lengthy. So I would say to anybody with either of these two backs, buyer beware, both on the wrong side of 30, both significant issues from an injury standpoint and from a declining skill set standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about specifically Charles, because he was in Kansas City with Peterson. He knows the offense. His age would be interesting, obviously with the injury history. But you got Sproles. Could you look at like a three-headed monster? Would he be an attractive piece in that kind of role?
I mean, I don't think so. I really don't. The Eagles need more of a bell cow back. They need, since Darren's most likely going to be here for another year, you have the third down sort of role filled. And by the way, Jamal Charles, a healthy Jamal Charles, is a heck of a receiver out of the backfield. So you're really kind of overlapping roles a little bit. In that kind of sense, Peterson would make at least a little bit more sense from what you need as far as a guy who can handle the football 20, 25 times and take the pounding. But again, the Eagles want to go young, and they want to get skill position people to build and grow with Carson Wentz. They don't want guys who are far closer to the finish line than the starting blocks. And I just don't think either of these players, even with Jamal Charles' history with Doug Peterson, are going to generate all that much buzz amongst the Eagles brass.
The Eagles are a team that wide receiver and corner seem to be the two main positions. Where do you think running back is on their list?
I think it's high on their list. I don't think they're very, very confident in saying, hey, Wendell Smallwood's going to be our number one running back. I think you can hope, if things fall in a positive fashion, maybe he gets that opportunity. But I don't think if you're the Eagles, you could certainly go in that direction and assume that's going to happen. So they definitely have to add a running back at some point. They are going to move on from Ryan Matthews, so they are going to most likely draft or sign a running back in free agency. But I think you should be more focused on sort of names like Latavius Murray than Jamal Charles or Adrian Peterson.
Talking with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Do you think now that Peterson's declined, what are the chances of him ending up back in Minnesota?
I think there's an opportunity. I think the starting point for him is going to be probably $6 million plus incentives. I don't think he'd want to take less than that. The Vikings have about $38 million in cap space now that they've released him, so they can afford it. He obviously means more to that organization than another organization. Talking about a probable future Hall of Famer, so that enters in the equation. And I just don't think when Adrian gets to free agency, I don't think there's going to be the interest that he thinks there's going to be. So once that happens, and the Vikings obviously need a running back, I could see them getting back together. I still think it's less than 50%, because I do believe there's another organization that will step up to the plate and give him the kind of money he wants. But you never say never in this league, and certainly it's a possibility.
John McMullen with us here talking Eagles football and NFL football. John, the Washington Redskins today made a move with Kirk Cousins. Talk about what the situation is with Kirk Cousins, a quarterback that's in the division and obviously of interest to Eagles fans and fans that follow the NFC East.
Well, we might want to stop talking about Sam Bradford as being the quarterback who his greatest skill set is making money. We might want to put that on Kirk Cousins now, because this is a guy who's going to sign his franchise tag pretty quickly like he did last year. And that's going to guarantee him $44 million over the last 2 seasons. And he's guaranteed to be a free agent in 2018, because you can't put the franchise tag on a player for 3 consecutive seasons. So you talk about a guy who's under 5. I think he's 19-21 as a starter. He's 2-11 against teams who are over 500 at the time he plays them, and he's made $44 million over the last 2 seasons. It's astonishing, and it just tells you what the cost of business is to do at that position. Because if you look around the league, he's not grossly overpaid. He's probably slightly overpaid. But, boy, that's a big number, $24 million a year for Kirk Cousins.
And you talk about the quarterback position. Of course, Tony Romo almost seems like a daily topic for us. But how about the chance? Oh, let me stay on Cousins for a second. What about the chances that he gets moved to San Francisco?
I don't think there's much of a chance, because they put the exclusive franchise tag on him. And if they wanted to trade him, you would think they would just put the lower burden on him, because there's no way they're getting 2 first-round picks. So if you put that lower tag on him, you would spur more interest from San Francisco. And if they wanted that second overall pick, perhaps that's how they went about it. I think he's going to sign it pretty quickly, within a week to 10 days after the new league year starts, probably, and he's going to play with the Redskins for $24 million.
One of my favorite movies, John, is the movie JFK, and I know at one point there's a scene where somebody's talking to Kevin Costner, and he's playing Jim Garrison, the guy that's trying to get to the bottom of the thing, and the guy turns to him and says, listen, at the end of the day, just follow the money. How does that apply to Tony Romo and what his situation is right now?
Well, when people talk about the Cowboys trying to trade Tony Romo, you have to understand the cap situation and the salary cap nightmare the Cowboys are in. His cap number for next season is $24 million, very similar to Kirk Cousins now. And to trade him, his base salary is $14 million. So not only would you be asking, you can insert the team name, whether it's Denver or Kansas City or Houston or Buffalo or Washington. Obviously, that's out the window with the Cousins signing. But any of the teams that people have speculated, and some people have said, hey, maybe you can get a second-round pick for Tony Romo. So not only would you have to send a second or a third or even a seventh-round pick, but you also have to pay him that $14 million. It's not going to happen. Everybody knows it's not going to happen. Everybody knows the end game here, and that's the Cowboys are going to release him, and it's because of the money. And that's the best case scenario for them. They'd save about $5.1 million under the salary cap, which is not great. But when you have nothing, and the Cowboys have virtually nothing under the cap as we stand today, they're the worst situated team in the NFL, along with the Jets, who've already made some space, so they are now the worst. They have to do it, and they're going to do it. And they're going to do it relatively quickly after the new league year starts, probably with a post-June 1st designation, which means they can sort of take that salary cap hit over 2 seasons.
So there you go, Eagles fans. They can take that to heckle back at the Cowboys fans in the South Jersey area and say, well, you're all the way up against the cap. Our team has plenty of room.
Hey, this time of year, it's helpful. But I think you would prefer the 13 wins or whatever the Cowboys had. But who knows? You have to ask the fans. You know, winning the offseason generally doesn't, as we can go back to the Dream Team year, it generally doesn't translate into the regular season. But even though the Eagles have their own salary cap issues, they are a lot better off than the Dallas Cowboys.
John McMullen's with us at JF McMullen on Twitter. There's a lot more NFL news out there. As we talked about Adrian Peterson, his contract declined. The Chiefs have released Jamal Charles. Cousins has been slapped with the exclusive franchise tag. Romo stuff out there. But how about closer to home where this Tim McManus article I thought was interesting that several free agent wide receivers like the idea of playing with Carson Wentz, and you wonder if the Eagles are going to try selling that to a lot of guys when they're making their pitch to the Stills or the Jeffries or whoever they may talk to, Deshaun Jackson. How much of a selling point is Carson Wentz?
Well, a good quarterback is always a selling point for a wide receiver, so it just makes sense from that standpoint. Obviously, if you're a receiver now, no matter how good you are, you need help because obviously somebody's got to get you the football. And generally receivers make money off their statistics and how many balls they catch and things like that. And to go into a situation where you have a young quarterback who's projected to be a top-tier guy for the next decade or so is certainly going to be desirous, and the Eagles are going to push it with certain free agent guys, and they should. I mean, that's what we always talk about, and I think that's what the Eagles want. They want young players to grow together, and similar to why I don't think Peterson and Charles is a fit is because they want guys coming off their first contract who are still in the prime of their career. Like a Kenny Stills would fit that definition at wide receiver. And if you're looking at that position, you're going to say, we got a very young quarterback coming into his second season. He's already put up big numbers with really, really bad receivers. Imagine what he can do with good receivers. I think it's just common sense from an Eagles standpoint.
I want to go back to Cousins real fast here because I find it interesting. Obviously, his ties to Shanahan make sense with the 49ers. People might say, why the hell the 49ers? They're terrible. But could this be Cousins and the 49ers and the Redskins acknowledging that maybe Cousins having to learn a new offense and that Cousins might say, I don't want to learn a new offense. I'd like to stay in that offense. I like that offense. You know, how much of that is in play here with Cousins' situation?
I don't think that's much in play for the reason because if Kirk wanted to stay in his situation, he'd look for a long-term deal. He keeps doing these one-year deals now, obviously for a boatload of money, but you don't have that security of being in the same place. And as I said, come 2018, he's going to be a free agent. And at that point, he might want to go and reunite with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. The thought is that would be the only team he would accept a trade to at this point, and that's the only thing that could kind of spur it along at this rate, because in the past we've talked about the dysfunction in the Redskins building and their organization. That could play into it, and if Washington wakes up tomorrow, if Daniel Snyder, Bruce Allen, Scott McClugan, who probably doesn't have any power, so it doesn't matter what he thinks, but if somebody wakes up tomorrow and they realize, you know what, we're not going to get anything for Kirk Cousins next year, and if he doesn't want to play for us, there's nothing we can do about it. So if there is a way to garner something this offseason, perhaps with a trade to the 49ers, maybe they might think about it, but only if they assume there's no way that Kirk Cousins is going to re-sign with them next season.
John McMullen, some more NFL news and notes. There's a lot of them today. How about Eric Berry? Doesn't get the franchise tag. They get a 6-year, $78 million deal for him. So Berry, we don't have to worry about him, not playing. He's a great story, with all that he has gone through.
Yeah, he is, and he's the highest paid safety in football. That's what he wanted. And the way he's played since coming back from lymphoma, he's had 2 all-pro seasons. Forget about Pro Bowl. So that's the kind of level he's played at. And it's always risky when you sign a player who's had those kind of health problems. There's always a danger of it reappearing, unfortunately. To pay that much in guaranteed money is always a roll of the dice. But it's a roll of the dice for anyone. And as I've written before, Eric Berry's already done more for the Kansas City organization than they could possibly do for him. So this was a deal that was always going to get done. It was just a matter of when. And the Chiefs made good on it today, and it's not much of a surprise.
John McMullen with us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN as we talk Eagles football and NFL, FanRagSports.com, all around the league. So, John, we're on a Thursday, last day of February. We talk about NFC East teams. How about the Giants using the non-exclusive franchise tag on Jason Pierre-Paul? Is that a good move?
Well, he played very well last season. I was a little surprised by that one, though, simply because normally when you want to pay that much to an edge defender, it's generally the big-time pass rushers. And since the accident, the fireworks accident, Jason Pierre-Paul's been more of a well-rounded player. He might be the best run-stopping defensive end in football, but he doesn't put up the big sack numbers anymore. So I was a little surprised, but you talk to people in North Jersey around the Giants, and he was their best defensive player along with Landon Collins. Those were the guys. So everyone talked about the free agent additions, and they all played well. Damon Harrison, Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, they all played well. But their 2 main guys were Jason Pierre-Paul and Landon Collins. So they really turned things around because of that defense. It was a startling turnaround, and he was a big part of it. And obviously they wanted to keep him. That's a big, big number, though, for a player that's not going to put up double digits in sacks.
What you think of the Antonio Brown deal, 4 years, 68?
I mean, it's a going rate. It's understandable. You're talking about a guy who, if he's not the best receiver in football, he's certainly in the top 2 or 3. And his production has been just incredible. And if you look at that team coming back with Ben Roethlisberger intimating retirement, but he's going to play. Le'Veon Bell is going to be back, and now Antonio Brown is going to be back and healthy, and more than healthy, happy. Because he finally got the big money deal. They're going to shape up. If they're not going to be the best offense in football, they're going to be right there with the top 2 or 3. So the Steelers have an open window, and they're a significant contender, and they're doing everything possible to keep the band together.
He's John McMullen, 97.3ESPN.com, and you can check out his pieces right now on our website. One regarding Kenny Stills and the Philadelphia Eagles, the other regarding the NFL Draft and the Philadelphia Eagles. At the top of the page, in the must-read section, click on McMullen's Eagles coverage.
That's my first place I go.
Of the Eagles offseason news and notes, as John has a couple of pieces right now for your enjoyment at 97.3ESPN.com. But don't forget, at JF McMullen on Twitter. Johnny, take care, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.